We are obsessed with the future, aren't we? Once we step into school, they love to ask, "What do you want to be in future, dear?" Another stepped into university. They ask, "Now, what is your future plan?" We stepped out of the educational system and go to work. Now, the HR manager may ask you, "Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?" Then, after we've been working for a while, here it comes. What do you want to do after you're retired? Or it could be something more advanced like what do you want people to remember you for after you die? May I see the hands of those who have faked those answers in their life at least once for whatever reasons, please? Thank you for your honesty. Well, but why did we all lie? Was it because we felt ashamed of our own answer? Or was it because we felt like we needed to impress the others? What if? What if? What if there's no one here expecting anything from you? What if there's no expecting glances or external voices? What would be your answer? What do you want to achieve in life? Well, following the expectations of others is not easy. When we were young, life was like walking on the stepping stones. The stones were paved, nice and pretty. All you need to do is just walk on the paved line and you're good. Like how people tell you that if you get good grade, be diligent, a shiny future would be a guarantee for you. Well, but we all know that that is not always the case, and this paved line is not made for everyone. When you think back when you were in high school, there would be a lot of types of students. There would be students who simply don't care. There would be people who literally crawl to get to the goal. And there's another type of student who simply just gets good grades every time as if they're hopping on this path with ease. Well, I have to admit that I'm in the latter group. Well, I did get a good grade, still do, but I was praised for being smart. Again, still am. It seemed like I didn't really put a lot of time and effort into understanding school materials, but don't get me wrong, it was not like I didn't try. I put effort into my assignment. I studied hard before the exam. Well, at least 2 or 3 nights before the exam, you get the idea. But still, most people will just ignore the effort because they believe that the smart kids in school can easily finish exam and assignment very quickly anyway. Still, I understand that a lot of people have suffered from trying their best yet can't get the best grade they want. And I think that the world is so unfair. Yes, I agree. Because meanwhile, the smart kids also think that the world is so unfair because how come the high standards become our norm? How come we're not allowed to fail sometime? I feel like I've never really met up with anyone's expectation despite my almost perfect GPA. I feel like the only thing I felt is that I need to do everything faster and faster and faster because I cannot walk. If I walk, that means I fail. And it seemed like my options were limited to either hop or run. It is so surprising how obsessed with the future we all can be. I've heard enough stories of my friends whose parents want them to have a better GPA or else they got assumed that they will not have a good, shiny future. Well, but the thing is that GPA comes from a mixture of more than 10 random subjects. So to expect anyone to be perfect in 10 random subjects is not very realistic. Besides, they may have other talents outside of the curriculum, but they just never have a chance to discover it. And they will just got to assume that their future is not going to be any good just because of that. For the smart kids in school, well, if you're labeled as smart kids in school, you will get at least these 2 types of assumption. Number 1, the typical one. The one who think that you're going to get the best grade, go to the best university, have a good and stable job. Number 2, ironically, is the one who think that you're not going to be successful because you know what they say. They say that the smart kids and diligent kids in school are just going to, follow the curriculum, being the boss and never do anything creative. They will be the boss. Like, just simply never be successful in that way anyway. So my point is that no matter who you are, with a good GPA or with a very terrible GPA, you will always expected to be someone. Your future will always get predicted by someone else. Still, I understand that a lot of parents want set their expectation to the children with good intention. And if you're wondering why the students don't always want to meet up with your expectation, here is the reason. Well, have you ever tried to force children to eat vegetables? It might be depends from case to case, but most of the time children would just say, "Ew, no to those veggies," right? But when you limit them to eat potato chips, they view those chips as some kind of like desirable, limited, or rare item. So some people call this psychological reactance. Psychological reactance is the situation where people have a negative reaction when someone have something to force onto them, and they become more desire for the limited option even more. Like how children refuse to eat vegetables and desire for more potato chips. Even though psychological reactance does not always occur when someone forces someone to do something, I still believe that it can affect your life goal to some degree. For me, in my case, since there are two false assumptions put onto me, I wanted to reject those. First, I'm not going to walk the paved line. Two, I can do something outside being like in the curriculum and getting good grades, okay? So before we get into high school, many of you know that in Thai system, before we get into high school, we need to choose what curriculum are we going to be in. So I chose math and English instead of math and science. I didn't really try to go to the best university in Thailand because, well, those places were the places that the smart kids were supposed to be. So I did what I did just because, I want to deviate myself from the paved line. And now since I'm not on the paved line anymore, so the first point is now rejected. Well, to the second point, I need to do something outside the system. So it may still make me sound like a nerd, but I try to learn German by myself. I really love drawing since I was young, so I try to be really serious about developing my art skill. And I really love reading, so I try to be more serious in really reading and analyzing topics of my interest, which are outside of the curriculum, of course. So it seemed like, finally, I'm not walking the paved line. I do something else. So it seemed like my shiny future is really awaiting ahead of me. Or was it? Really? Well, things turned out to be more terrible than I expected. Even though I've been learning German for 3 years, to my demise, I'm not even sure even I can even pass A2 exam or not. And everything else that I've been doing outside of getting good grades is not very good, actually. Even though people around me tell me that, my progress is okay enough. But for me, it's just not as spectacular. It's not wonderful. It's not as a miracle as how fast and easy I can get my grades. So, yeah, that's how terrible it went. To make the matter worse, the smart kids in school, the so-called smart kids in school, never really learn how to learn. We didn't learn how to cope with the fact that we cannot just sprint to the goal. Still, after we realize that, we dare not walk because we're not supposed to be. If you are a true genius, then you're supposed to put less effort than this. If you walk, that means you're not smart, and if you're not smart, then who are you? Well, if walking is terrifying enough, then let alone stumbling or falling, the small silly stumble can transform into an unforgettable mistake. And we're so obsessed with fixing that little stumble and refuse to step ahead. So instead of feeling like the shiny future is really awaiting ahead of me, I see thick fog blocking my vision, and I'm afraid to move on. And that is when I realized this. I was trying too hard, focusing on what others told me, focusing on trying to prove to them that I'm not a typical smart kid, I'm not a walking stereotypes, but never really focused on what I really wanted. So I need to reconsider my life goal again. Being yourself doesn't mean that you go against everything. It just means that you need to follow your own voice to carve your own path. Therefore, I should not try to prove to them that I'm not a typical smart kid, but try to prove to myself that my goal is what I really want to achieve. Well, If you're still wondering, like, what if you can never find your life goal, like ever, what should you do? Well, if you cannot find a goal right now, it doesn't mean that there's no hope for you. There's some people who can find their goal later in their life. Let me give you some example. Colonel Sanders, the owner of KFC restaurant, opened his restaurant when he was 65. Dr. Jane Goodall, a primatologist, actually my idol, she started as a secretary and a waitress, but then she impressed an expert with her knowledge and got hired and then got accepted as a PhD candidate at Cambridge University and continued her wonderful works after that. Still, there might be some of you who still want to protest that, hey, only a selected few can be glamorous and successful, right? Well, I kind of agree on that, but if you really think in that way, then allow me to introduce Mr. Matey. He's my academic advisor sitting over there. You may know him, you may not know him. Well, but as I said before, he's my academic advisor. I know it doesn't sound like spectacular, wonderful, or whatever you want to say as being a billionaire, but he tried his best to prepare us to be a better member of society as a teacher, and also prepare some of us to be confident on the stage today. So why don't you just give him a big hand for being such a good person of society like this and find his goal right now today? See? Actually, he's smiling, so I really wish you all can see his smile, but yeah. So this positive feeling of feeling proud of what you're doing, of feeling proud of what you made, like the effects of you that having on the society, should be one of the most important factors when you choose what you want to achieve. Besides, even though I cannot find my goal right now, I still have a few people around me to just be with me. They may not be the beacon of light, but at least I'm not alone when it is dark. They may not be the best guide to my destination, but they will help support me when I fall. And I know the future is not always going to be bright, but in the same manner, it can't always be dark. Therefore, to answer, what do you want to achieve in life? You need to let go of what others expect of you, but you can't just rebel against everything like how I did in my early age also. Now, even though my path is not quite clear yet, I do not lose hope. Considering the life of Colonel Sanders, Dr. Goodall, and also my academic advisor, to find your goal is not impossible. You may need time. It might be something different from what you've been doing in the beginning, and even though your small goal doesn't seem like a big success in the other's eye, it doesn't matter. If it makes you feel good about your life in general, then it's reasonable enough for you to pursue your passion. Still, even though I say that you can take a slow or small steps, if there is a need for you to run, then do it. But make sure that after the long and tiring race, you feel proud, you feel refreshed, not feeling like you've been wasting your time and you shouldn't have run there at all. Blindly following expectations just because it's supposed to be won't do anyone any good. Not for people who can't follow it. And even though those people who can follow it so well suffers. So you need to find your own goal. You need to carve your own path. You may fail, you may need time. I cannot guarantee to you that you're going to be successful, but no one can guarantee you also that your life will end up miserable. So now it's your turn. If there's no one here to expect anything from you, what would you answer? What is your final destination? What do you want to achieve in life? Thank you.